Have you ever noticed that the same problem appears in your life again and again and again? The scenery changes, the person changes, the year changes, but the suffering is the same betrayal, the same abandonment, the same feeling of not being enough, the same debt, the same burnout, the same emptiness after everything you did for someone. If you clicked on this video, it wasn't by chance, and I am going to prove that to you in the next few minutes. Because today, here now, you are going to understand exactly why your life seems to repeat the same script of suffering. More than that, you will leave here with the real key to break this cycle once and for all. This is the last time you suffer for this reason. Stay with me until the end because the most important revelation of this video is in the final minutes, and it will completely change the way you see everything that has happened to you until today. Before we continue, I need you to do one simple thing. Look at your life over the last 5-10 years. Do a quick exercise with me. Think about the 3 greatest pains you have experienced during this period. It could be a relationship that ended badly, a financial problem that seemed to have no end, an illness that appeared out of nowhere, a friendship that disappointed you deeply. Now, answer honestly. Do these pains have something in common? If the answer is yes, congratulations. You have just identified your cycle. And recognizing the cycle is the first step to getting out of it. The problem is that most people spend their entire lives without realizing they are trapped in a loop. They think it's bad luck, bad destiny, or punishment. But it's none of that. And I am going to explain to you what is really happening. There is a concept in psychology called repetition compulsion. It was Sigmund Freud who first described this phenomenon back at the beginning of the 20th century. He noticed that patients who suffered trauma in childhood, instead of staying away from similar situations, were attracted to them. They repeated the pattern. If they were abandoned as children, they chose partners who abandoned them in adult life. If they grew up in an environment of scarcity and humiliation, they unconsciously recreated similar environments. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? Why would anyone choose to suffer again? Because the unconscious doesn't want to punish you. It wants to heal you. Each repetition is a desperate attempt by your mind to resolve what was left pending. It is as if your psyche was saying, "This time it will be different. This time I will handle it. This time I will be loved." But if you are not conscious of this mechanism, the result is always the same. The wound opens again, the pain returns, and the cycle continues. Now pay attention to this data. A survey by the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, the IBGE, released in 2023, showed that more than 65% of Brazilians over 35 report feeling that they are stagnant in some area of their life. Work, relationships, health, finances, 65%. This means that if you are feeling this stagnation, you are not alone. But it also means that there is something systematic happening. It is not an individual failure, it is a collective pattern, and collective patterns are maintained by individual patterns. In other words, the cycle that repeats in your life is the same cycle that repeats in the lives of millions of people. The difference is that you are here, now, willing to see. Let's go deeper. I will show you the 3 most common symptoms of someone who is trapped in a cycle of repetition. Pay close attention, because recognizing the symptoms is what will allow you to act differently. The first symptom is inexplicable fatigue. You sleep, but you don't rest. You take a vacation, but you come back more exhausted than when you left. You have moments of joy, but they last a short time, and then comes that heavy feeling that nothing really changes. This fatigue is not just physical. It is an exhaustion of the soul. It is the wear and tear of living through the same battles without moving forward. Your body is warning you that something needs to change at a much deeper level than the routine. Neuroscience has already demonstrated that repetitive emotional states of chronic stress alter the production of cortisol in the body. When you live in a cycle of suffering, your organism remains permanently in a state of alert. And this constant state of alert consumes a brutal amount of energy. It's not drama. It's not laziness, it's your nervous system screaming for help. The second symptom is self-sabotage. You know when everything starts to go right and suddenly you do something that ruins everything? That job that was going well and you picked an unnecessary fight with the boss. That relationship that was beautiful and you pushed the person away. That money that finally was left over and you spent impulsively on something you didn't need. That is self-sabotage. And self-sabotage is not stupidity. It is protection. Your unconscious learned back then that when things get good, the fall is more painful, so it knocks you down first. At least this way the fall is controlled. At least this way you fall sitting down and not face first on the ground. It is a perverse logic, but it is a logic. And as long as you don't bring this logic into consciousness, it will continue operating in the dark. The third symptom is the attraction to toxic people and situations. If you look at your relationship history, you will notice a pattern. Perhaps you are attracted to emotionally unavailable people. Perhaps you always get involved with someone who needs to be saved. Perhaps you always fall into the role of the one who gives everything and receives nothing. This pattern is not a coincidence. It is your unconscious trying to reenact the past. You are seeking, without knowing it, the opportunity to repair an old wound through a new person. But the new person does not have that responsibility. They are not your father. They are not your mother. They are not the child who rejected you on the school playground. And when they fail to heal what only you can heal, the pain returns, and the cycle starts over. If you identified with at least one of these three symptoms, leave a comment down below right now. Write which of the three you felt the most. It can be just one word: fatigue, sabotage, or attraction. I read all the comments, and it makes a huge difference to know that this content is reaching the right people. Now let's go to the most important part of this video. Let's talk about the causes. Why does the cycle exist? Where does it come from? And here I need to be honest with you. The answer involves both science and spirituality. And I know that many people separate these two worlds as if they were opposites. But the truth is that they complement each other in a way that will surprise you. From the perspective of science, repetition cycles originate in childhood, specifically in the first 7 years of life. During this period, a child's brain operates predominantly in theta brain waves, which is the same state as a person under hypnosis. This means that everything that happens around the child is absorbed directly by the subconscious, without a critical filter. If you grew up hearing that money is dirty, that rich people are dishonest, that men are no good, that women have to endure in silence, that you weren't smart enough, that showing emotion was a weakness, all of this was recorded in your subconscious as absolute truth. And it is from these implanted truths that you make decisions in adult life. These are not conscious decisions. They are automatic decisions. Programs that run in the background, like software you never consciously installed, but that controls everything you do. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a cell biologist and researcher at Stanford University, demonstrated in his studies that approximately 95% of our daily actions are governed by the subconscious. 95%. This means that you think you are in control, but most of the time the one behind the wheel is a 5-year-old version of you, scared, afraid of being rejected, afraid of not being loved. And this inner child does not disappear when you grow up. It hides. And from there, behind the scenes, it continues making decisions for you. Now, from the perspective of spirituality, repetition cycles exist because they are tools for evolution. Mind you, I am not talking about divine punishment. I am talking about a learning mechanism. Several spiritual traditions, from Buddhism to Spiritism, from shamanism to Hinduism, speak about the idea that the soul incarnates with specific purposes. And these purposes involve lessons. If you don't learn the lesson in one experience, life presents you with the same lesson again, in a different package. It is like failing a subject in school. You are not expelled. You repeat. Life is not against you. It is trying to teach you. But if you keep answering the test the same way, the result will always be the same. And here is the point where science and spirituality meet. Both say that repetition is an invitation to consciousness. The cycle does not exist to destroy you. It exists to awaken you. The pain that repeats is an alarm. And alarms exist to be heard, not ignored. But then how to break the cycle? That is the million-dollar question. And the answer is simpler than you imagine, although it requires courage. I'm going to present to you now the 3 concrete steps to end the cycle of repetition in your life once and for all. And I ask you to pay close attention here, because these 3 steps are transformative when applied with seriousness. The first step is the identification of the pattern. It seems obvious, but almost no one really does this. Take a notebook, open the Notes app on your phone, anything, and answer these questions with brutal honesty. What is the pain that repeats the most in my life? What is the emotion that I feel most recurrently? Who are the people who hurt me the most, and what do they have in common? At what moment in my childhood did I feel this same emotion for the first time? These questions are powerful because they take you straight to the root. And when you see the root, the plant stops growing in the dark. I challenge you right now to pause this video, take your phone, and write down the answers. It can be quick, it can be messy, but it needs to be honest. Do this now and then come back, I'll wait for you. The second step is the emotional break from the past version of yourself. This is crucial. As long as you continue defining yourself by your pains, the cycle will keep you hostage. Let me explain it another way. When something bad happened to you repeatedly, you created an identity around this suffering. Without realizing it, you started to present yourself to the world and to yourself based on your wounds. I am the person who was abandoned. I am the person who never has luck. I am the person who is always betrayed. I am the person who works too much and is never recognized. This identity became your comfort zone, and here is the cruel irony of repetition cycles. What hurts you also gives you security because it is familiar. Leaving the cycle means giving up this identity. It means saying, I am no longer this person, and that is scary, because if I am no longer the person who suffers in this way, who am I? This question is the portal to freedom. But most people back away from it. Don't back away. Face it. There is a powerful practice that I recommend, and that combines psychology and spirituality. It is called a closing ritual. It works like this. You choose a quiet moment in your day. It can be at night before sleeping. You close your eyes and visualize the version of yourself that lived through all these pains. See this version with compassion. They did the best they could with what they had. Thank them for everything they endured, and then, mentally, say to them, thank you for protecting me up to here, but now I take over. I know it seems too simple, but when done with presence and truth, this exercise has the power to deactivate emotional patterns that have accompanied you for decades. Neuroscience has already demonstrated that visualization activates the same brain areas as the real experience. In other words, when you say goodbye emotionally to the past in a conscious way, your brain registers this farewell as a real event. You literally reprogram your nervous system. And now the third step. This is the most important one, and that is why I asked you to stay until the end. The third step is the deliberate choice of a new pattern. It is not enough to leave the cycle. You need to enter another one, because nature does not tolerate a vacuum. If you just remove a behavior without replacing it with something new, the old one will return. It is like pulling out a weed without planting anything in its place. The weed comes back. So after identifying the pattern and emotionally saying goodbye to the old version of yourself, you need to decide consciously and intentionally who you are choosing to be from now on. And this decision needs to be specific. It is not enough to say, I want to be happy. That is vague. Say, I choose to be a person who sets healthy boundaries in my relationships. I choose to be a person who values their own time and their own energy. I choose to be a person who does not diminish themselves to fit into the lives of others. I choose to be a person who receives love without fear. This specificity is what transforms intention into action, and repeated action is what creates the new pattern. Now, if you are thinking that this is easy, I tell you with all sincerity, it is not. Breaking a cycle of repetition is one of the most courageous acts a human being can practice, because it requires you to face the fear of the unknown. The pain you know, as bad as it may be, is predictable. The freedom you haven't lived yet is scary precisely because it is new. But I promise you one thing. On the other side of fear exists a life you can't even imagine right now. A life where the same problems don't chase you anymore. A life where you choose your relationships with clarity. A life where abundance doesn't scare you. A life where you wake up without that inexplicable weight in your chest. This life exists, and it is waiting for you. If this content made sense to you, if something I said here touched a point that you already felt but couldn't put into words, I ask you, share this video. Send it to that person you know is going through this. Sometimes we can't explain what we are feeling, but we can share a video that speaks for us. And this simple act of sharing can be the beginning of the transformation in the life of someone you love. I want to tell you something that few content creators talk about. Every time you like a video, comment or subscribe, you are not just interacting with a channel. You are telling the algorithm, this content needs to reach more people. So if you believe this message is important, use your power of clicking to spread it. Turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos, because the next content I am preparing will go even deeper into everything we talked about today. Now, before finishing, I need to tell you about a trap that catches many people who discover repetition cycles. This trap is called retroactive guilt. When you understand that you spent years repeating patterns, the first reaction is to blame yourself. Why didn't I see this before? How was I so blind? How many years did I waste? Stop. Breathe. You didn't waste anything. Each cycle you repeated brought you to this exact moment. If you hadn't felt that pain for the 10th time, perhaps you wouldn't have looked for this video. Perhaps you wouldn't have this level of maturity to hear what I am saying. The entire journey, including the suffering, is part of the evolution. Don't punish yourself for taking so long. Celebrate for having arrived. There is a phrase that I have carried with me for many years, and that summarizes all of this in a way that gives me chills every time I repeat it. The pain that is not transformed is transmitted. This applies to your individual life, and it applies to generations. The patterns you don't resolve are the patterns your children will inherit, not biologically but emotionally. The way you deal with money, with love, with conflict, with fear, all of this is passed on, not in the DNA but in the living, in the energy, in the daily example. When you break a cycle in your life, you're not just freeing yourself, you're freeing entire generations that would come after you repeating the same story. Think about your mother. Think about your father. Think about your grandparents. How many of them lived trapped in the same cycles that you carry today? How many of them didn't have access to this information? How many of them suffered in silence, without understanding why life always seemed so heavy? You have today what they didn't have: consciousness. And consciousness is the most powerful tool that exists, more powerful than money, more powerful than status, more powerful than anything the external world can offer you. Because with consciousness, you don't just change circumstances, you change yourself. And when you change, everything around you changes too. I know you might be thinking, but in practice, how do I do this tomorrow morning when I wake up and real life runs me over? I will give you a simple protocol that you can start tomorrow. When you wake up, before picking up your phone, before looking at messages, before thinking about problems, do 3 things. First, put your hand on your chest and feel your own breathing for 30 seconds. This activates the parasympathetic nervous system and takes you out of automatic mode. Second, make a declaration out loud. Say, "Today I choose to act differently." You don't need to shout. You can whisper, but say it. The vibration of your own voice registers in your body in a way that silent thought cannot. Third, choose a specific situation of the day where you would normally repeat the old pattern. It could be the way you respond to criticism at work. It could be the tendency to say yes when you want to say no. It could be the impulse to check your partner's phone. Choose one, just one, and in that situation, do it differently, consciously, uncomfortably, do it differently. This protocol seems small, but it is revolutionary, because real change doesn't happen in big dramatic gestures. It happens in daily micro-decisions. It is in the accumulation of small conscious choices that the new pattern is installed. It is like diverting a river. You don't need to build a giant dam. You need, day after day, to dig a new channel, until the water, which before flowed to the same place as always, starts to flow in a new direction. And now I'm going to tell you something that is perhaps the most important thing in this whole video. If you made it this far, you are different. I am not saying this to please you. I am saying it because it is statistically true. Most people give up in the first few minutes. Most look for quick and superficial answers. You stayed, you listened, you reflected. And this, in itself, is already a cycle break. The simple act of not looking for an instant solution, of allowing yourself to dive deep into content that challenges you, is already proof that something in you is different. Something in you is ready to change. And I need to tell you something that I took years to understand. When you start to break cycles, the world around you resists. The people who were used to the old version of you will be surprised. They will demand things from you. They will say that you have changed, as if changing were something bad. Friends who knew you as the person who always gives in will be bothered when you say no. Family members who counted on your infinite availability will call you selfish when you start to prioritize yourself. And partners who benefited from your lack of boundaries will accuse you of having become cold, distant, different. Know that this is normal. And more than normal, it is a sign that you are on the right path. The resistance of the environment is proof that the change is real. If no one noticed, it would mean that nothing really changed. There is a concept in physics that applies perfectly here. It is called inertia. A body at rest tends to remain at rest. A body in motion tends to continue in the same direction. When you change direction, there is a force that tries to pull you back. This force comes from people, from habits, from beliefs, from fear. But just like in physics, after you overcome the initial inertia, the new movement becomes increasingly natural. The first few days are the most difficult. The first few weeks require constant attention. But in a short time, the new pattern starts to operate with the same naturalness as the old one. And then when you look back, you will ask yourself, how did I live that way for so long? I want to give you one more practical example that might help you visualize all of this. Imagine a 42-year-old woman. Let's call her Claudia. Claudia grew up in a house where her father was an alcoholic and her mother was always trying to keep the family on its feet. Claudia learned early on that loving someone meant saving someone. In adult life, Claudia married twice. The first husband had gambling problems. The second had anger issues. Both relationships ended in the same way, with Claudia exhausted, guilty, and convinced that she had failed. When Claudia finally saw the pattern, she understood that she was not a woman with bad luck in love. She was a woman who, unconsciously, sought men who needed to be saved because it was the only form of love she knew. The day Claudia decided she deserved a love that didn't need rescuing, everything changed. Not overnight, not without pain. But it changed, because consciousness changes everything. Claudia's story could be the story of anyone watching this video right now. Change the name, change the detail, but the mechanism is the same. We repeat what we learned, and we only stop repeating when we decide to learn something new. I believe that there are moments in life when everything conspires for a message to reach you at the right time. This could be one of those moments. Not because I am special, not because this channel is magical, but because you were ready. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Sometimes the teacher is a person, sometimes it is a book, sometimes it is a video on YouTube that you almost didn't click on. The last time you suffered for this reason was today. Not because the pain will magically disappear, but because today you understood where it comes from. Today you received the tools to deal with it differently. And from today on, every time the cycle tries to repeat itself, you will recognize it. And recognizing is the first step to not repeating. Repeat with me, even if only mentally. I choose to end this cycle. I choose to free myself. I deserve a life where the same suffering does not visit me anymore. I'll leave it here. But before, tell me in the comments, which cycle are you deciding to end today? Write it in your own words, because when you put on paper or on the screen what before lived only in your head, you take the power away from it. You transform the invisible into visible, and the visible can be faced. See you in the next video, and remember, the end of the cycle is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new one, the best one you have ever lived. A hug in your heart. Until next time.